Shalom Chaverim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. We have breaking news coming out of Syria right now. Amman News is reporting that the U.S. government has actually struck Syrian targets there near a place called Al-Halba. Now, we want to jump over here, our map here, jump in here, kind of running just a little bit half wired. I was actually preparing for the live broadcast this evening and got kind of blindsided by this particular story here. Now, we were seeing a lot of things that are going on in Syria as it is, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to go live tonight on what's happening. And the U.S. State Department already warning the Syrian government not to go near the Jordanian border of Dada, where the Syrian government is preparing a major offensive against ISIS and Al Qaeda members there. It's just kind of strange, though, you know, because when you think about it, why is the Syrian government not allowed to reclaim its own borders? And we're going to get into that tonight. By the way, though, just for your information, I was going to do a broadcast here on Israeli News Live, still getting into this issue over the immigration of children. Of course, we do not believe in illegal immigration whatsoever or opening the borders to people. And I do realize that President Trump does not solely bear the responsibility of separating the children from the families, although he did very clearly get involved in that issue by his no-tolerance policy. As Jeff Sessions clearly stated, if you come in illegally, you're going to lose your kids. Okay, so we went into that much deeper, but I got so deep into that information, I actually went into President Trump's spiritual advisors, and my research took me so far down that rabbit hole that the New World Order, the connection to his spiritual advisors is overwhelming, shocking. Their direct relationship to the Vatican, the New World Order, and what we're being led to and why. I don't even want to get into it right now. Anyway, though, it's in the process right now. You can see here on your screen here, we did a very in-depth broadcast. We were able to narrow it down to about 50 minutes, but it's going to air on Patreon because of the sensitivity of the information. Now, I will share some of that information with you guys, but there's just some things because the names that are named in here, their connections to Rome is bewildering beyond belief. And so therefore we felt it a little bit safer to load it on Patreon. So tomorrow that will air on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Israeli News Live. Now let's get back to what's breaking here. It's still kind of fresh at that point, but as you can see here, the Syrian military, again, we've been sharing with you for days that they are moving in massive amounts of military equipment. We saw 60 plus tanks go down there, and they're also between Dada and Quneitra, and at the same time, we're also seeing that, let's see, finally right here, the State Department issuing a statement, U.S. remains, let me get back to the part here. Troubled by reports of increasing Syrian regime operations in southwest Syria with boundaries of de-escalation zone negotiated between the U.S., Jordan, Russia. U.S. continues to warn both Russia and the Assad regime of serious repercussions of these violations. Again, you know what? It doesn't matter if you negotiated a ceasefire zone when your ceasefire zone does nothing but house Al Qaeda, Al Nusra, and ISIS militants that are imprisoning the Syrian population, murdering them, and the only thing that the U.S. and the coalition is doing is aiding and abetting in chemical weapons attacks on the civilian population to blame it on Assad. You know, that becomes a major issue. And it's very troubling indeed what we're seeing. Even Ron Paul He brought it out on the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, U.S. State Department concerned over Syrian government operations in Syria. Well, it looks like they've not wasted any time by lamb-blasting the country once again in the Syrian military and their latest attacks there. As I said, Amman News breaking. It happened to pop up on my screen. The U.S. coalition has bombed the Syrian Arab army positions in southern Syria tonight, the National Defense Forces reported. All right, now let's jump back into here. Let's see if we can get some more breaking news directly. Let's go to the latest things that are happening here in Syria and see what we got here. Yes, new U.S. coalition airstrikes on government positions in eastern Syria. Now they're saying this is actually eastern Syria is where that is happening rather than southern, actually southeast. If we're looking at our map, we go back over to that. That is, yes, south, but it is east of Damascus, not quite out far towards the Azor or Al-Tanf area. In fact, actually, it's just north of Al-Tanf. If you're looking on your map, Al-Tanf is right here. And in fact, if you look at Google Images, you can actually pick up where the U.S. Actually has one of their outposts here. It has clearly developed quite substantially with airplane runways and everything else you can imagine here. That's where the U.S. has got one of their bases there inside of Syria there. And speaking of bases there, we also see that Sputnik is reporting Washington deployed 19 military facilities in Syria to train militants analysts. The United States has deployed, says here, the Pentagon has deployed 19 military bases and strongholds in Syria, as well as 22 military bases in neighboring countries in order to ensure the uninterrupted supply of weapons, ammunition, fuel, food, and to militants from terrorist organization, Professor Vladimir Kozin said. Military experts cited the example of U.S. base in Al-Tanf in the south of Syria, which I just showed you those images. According to Kozin, the airspace over the town and about 30 miles around its borders was closed off, although Damascus never agreed to that. Now, that's actually interesting because this is what the State Department is saying. They negotiated with Russia, but Damascus didn't agree with it. Well, what do you know? Kind of figures, right? So anyway, let's see. Anybody else reporting on this as of yet? Israel behind attacks in Syria that killed dozens of U.S. officials reportedly. Wow, that's a new one there. I've not seen that before. This is coming out on Haaretz today. Israel behind attack in Syria that killed dozens, U.S. official reportedly says. Don't know anything about this story as of yet here. It's behind an attack in Syria that killed dozens. CNN reported Monday citing a U.S. official. According to Syrian state television, the strike targeted a pro-regime forces and caused multiple casualties. The airstrike took place on the Iraqi-Syrian border. Okay, this is what we were reporting to you originally. And if you remember, of course, that was at Al-Harar, southeast of town of Al-Bukamal. State news agency, Sana, said, citing a military source. We reported this to you guys. In fact, when they were accusing the U.S. of being involved in it, I actually said then that I believed that it was probably Israel and that they're doing it justifying themselves, saying that they were targeting Iranian forces there. Said earlier today, Syrian state TV reported that the U.S.-led coalition struck military positions in the country's east. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reports that 40 pro-Assad regime fighters were killed in the strike. So, you know, Netanyahu is taking the opportunity to strike anywhere inside of Syria with no impunity whatsoever, only because he thinks he can. By the way, I did a report a little while back, many of you guys are aware of that, where I spoke about how that the covenant with Laban that Jacob made, and somebody actually came in and made a comment and says, there was never a covenant made with Laban. Oh, yes, there was. Jacob made the covenant with Laban, his father-in-law, when he was coming after him to catch him at the border. Of course, Laban had cheated Jacob, I realize that, but they made a covenant of peace with one another, and that covenant was never broken until Ahab came along. And then, of course, Ahab broke that covenant, and that's what created all the unrest. Of course, Jacob prophesied, if you ever take any other daughters other than my daughters, even though we be apart, God judge between me and you. And Ahab, his own son, Jacob's descendant, broke that covenant that Laban and Jacob had married, took Jezebel, a daughter that was not part of Israel nor of the Syrian people, which our mothers are all Syrians, by the way. Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, their handmaids there, they were all Syrians, the mothers of Israel. So anyway, just kind of checking to see, though, if we can see anything else going on before we sign out of our broadcast here. 48 new results popping in pretty fast. Syria Real Infos and News Syrian. Let's see if we got anything going out here now. Not as of yet, but I'm sure you're going to be finding out more as we go ahead and go to bed here tonight. U.S. coalition airstrikes on government positions in eastern Syria via hedge, according to where Wall Street meets politics. Reports on U.S. coalition airstrikes on government, though as of yet unconfirmed in other international sources. Russian and Syrian state media are reporting major U.S. coalition airstrikes in eastern Syria, which left multiple. We're getting more about this now, so hopefully somebody will pick this up here and we'll find out more about it. Though yet unconfirmed, left multiple civilians, at least one Syrian soldier dead, 8 civilians killed and many injured during U.S. coalition airstrikes in Al-Sharata village and Azord countryside on Thursday. The unconfirmed breaking story cites civil sources in region of the strikes to report that at least 8 civilians were killed, many others were injured. A huge destruction affected to the houses after warplanes of the U.S.-led international coalition carried out many raids on the citizens' houses. Early this week, the Syrian government accused the U.S. of conducting massive airstrikes on government forces near Abu Kamal along the Iraqi-Syrian border, after which the coalition spokesman issued a formal denial. Ended up, as I said, being Israel that actually carried those strikes out there. At least they were accused of carrying the strikes out. Now, keep in mind, though, the State Department is saying, even as Ron Paul is bringing out, the State Department is threatening they will do something to Syria if they try to take back the southern part of their country. They call that a no-conflict zone. The only UN no-confliction zones that were ever negotiated, though, had nothing to do with the U.S. at all. Maybe U.S. and Russia have kind of they may have come to some agreement, but that's just not the case. Maria Zakharova also kind of weighing in on that $6.6 million that was given to the White Helmets, as she calls it, a propaganda tool, war tool, and certainly it is. And we can certainly expect a false flag attack in the very near future, because the deep state is biting at the chomp to take down Syria and move along the New World Order agenda that they have in mind, that they have envisioned. So I am only waiting to see how all of that will play out. Anyway, let's check over, see what's going on the live broadcast here. Thank our moderators, Jennifer, Sisters Jennifer, Ashley, and Christine. Thank you so much for being here tonight to manage those things that are going on in here. Looks like we got quite a few people in here, a little over 700. If it is a blessing to you, thumbs up the video. If what we bring and teach to you is a blessing, don't forget to support the broadcast. We can't do it without your help. That's IsraeliNewsLive.org, or you can go to Patreon. That's .com/Israeli News Live, and you can support the broadcast there. Either way, and we are loading more and more up on Patreon. We are now loading photos that we take. We've taken a lot of photos of world leaders, as well as of places that we've been, war photos, things like that for our Patreon viewers that you are able to access and given permission to use them in your blogs or wherever, because we realize that Google has made it very difficult for people to be able to download images off of the internet without being infringing on copyrights. So we've taken a lot of photos like that. We've all kinds of foreign ministers, everything else like that. So we're going to be loading a little bit at a time. And my wife, Yana, is also going to be writing articles on patreon.com/Israeli News Live. So anyway, check those things out. Let's see. Anyway, so blessings to all of you. Thank you so much for joining in here. Someone said something about a prophecy the Lord had given them there. Just email me, stephenbenoon@gmail.com. I will try to catch it. I do get hundreds of emails a day, so if I miss it, please forgive me, but I will look for that email as well. And blessings to you all. Don't forget again, Patreon. Tomorrow, the video is still processing, so it'll take some time. It's in high definition. The in-depth look at how President Trump's spiritual advisors on board with the Pope of Rome, leading the president to a new world order. That kind of goes hand in hand as I speak again, once again, about the immigration issue. And as we stated clearly, we're not for illegal immigration. But we believe that the families, if they can put them all in these FEMA detention camps, which is where they're going to put us one day, then they could keep the families together and deport them together. I'm Stephen Benoon. You're watching Israeli News Live. Erev Tov.